Hey, I'm Alex, and I've just recently come back from the Milford Track, which has been absolutely incredible. So much so that I wanted to put together a little video sharing some of the experiences and potentially with some helpful tips which may help you plan your own trip in the future. Let's go. So, before I go any further, what is the Milford Track? Well, it's a 4-day, 3-night walk that goes up the Clinton Valley towards the northwest, crosses over McKinnon Pass at its highest point, and then descends through the Arthur Valley back towards Milford Sound. It terminates at Sandfly Point, which is about 1 kilometre away from Milford Sound itself. In any case, we'll be touching on all of these points as we're walking, but for now, it's time to take the ferry across from Tano Downs. Fiordland is often referred to as the land of shadows, or Atahuenua, but in this case, we had a beautiful sunny day ahead of us. Probably about 50 hikers setting off on the guided group, and just 3 of us on the boat from the independent walkers, with the rest having taken the 10 a.m. ferry. Lake Te Anau is the South Island of New Zealand's largest lake, set at an elevation of 210 metres and about 65 kilometres long, running north-south. Looking west, you can easily see where the glacial valleys that have fed the lake are located. The sides of the mountains here are covered in native beech trees and slope steeply towards the lake's surface. And this is it. We have arrived at the start of the track at Glade Wharf.
Thank you very much.
Day 1 is the easy intro to the Milford Track, with just over 6 k's, including detours past the Glade House and along the west bank of the river through some beech forest. There is a slight detour here to a wetland, which is well worth doing, and as well to the river bank to some exploring before reaching the Clinton Hut. All up, about 2.5 hours with a bunch of photo stops. At this point, it's about 4 in the afternoon, so at least 3 hours to make it the 5 kilometres up the track to the Clinton Hut. The guided tour only has 1 kilometre today to get to the Glade House. Some of those kilometres will be made up in the next few days, but generally the lodges will be located a few kilometres before the huts. The sound of helicopters overhead can often be heard as supplies or hikers are delivered to the huts and lodges along the way. Well, time for a 3-course dinner for the guided hikers, but for independent ones, it is onward for 4 kilometres. The white sands of the riverbed, combined with clear blue skies, make the water appear a stunning azure colour. At just over 70 metres, this is one of the longest suspension bridges on the track, but definitely gets you used to what to expect on these bouncy river crossings. Well, here we are, all alone in the big bad forest, and can hear some birds. Can't see any yet. It's very windy. Very windy, but only out by the river, and most of this hike is in some nice canopy cover. The path here follows the western bank of the Clinton River, with occasional glimpses up at the mountains. First sign of native life on the path, a little weka digging around in the grass. These are really curious little creatures. It was definitely very interested in my backpack and all its straps and trying to pull whatever it could right off it. This area was where the Neil Burn River flowed in to meet the Clinton River, and it was a stunning spot, almost like a Japanese garden out here, with just gently flowing water, but unfortunately swarming with sandflies. Well, we made it. Day one, and this is it. I can almost see the hut. 2 minutes to go. After a hearty dinner, most people headed out to either check out the nearby glowworm cave, which was very impressive but very difficult to photograph, or to look for kiwi, where with their red lights turned on, they would not disturb them. I'm not sure who ended up finding one. I was one of the last to get in today, so ended up having to take the top bunk of the last remaining bed. But it's first come, first serve out here, so you get what you get and you don't get upset. Very different during the daytime, but I came here at night around 10 p.m. and the Milky Way was out in a way I've never seen before. Just incredible, lying back on the rock and looking up. Somewhere up in those mountains in the distance is the Dora Pass, where you can get to Glade House Lodge without taking the ferry. One thing here I'd highly recommend in these huts is, as there are 18 to 20 people in this one on the first night, definitely grab a pair of earplugs if that'll help you sleep. There's a lot of rustling, a lot of snoring going on. It is quite warm though, and there is plenty of light in the morning coming through these skylights. All there was to do was tip the mattress on the side, let it air out, take all the belongings and head off before the walkers from the Glade House made it over here. This was also a good chance to fill up on clean water, as the hot water is collected from a waterfall out back and generally safe enough to drink. I definitely drank it without filtering and felt fine for all 3 days. Day 2 and a bit of fog rolled in the morning with the promise of some light rain, but the deck was the perfect place to have a bit of a stretch after carrying the pack for the first 5Ks. What you can see in the distance there is what they call a tree avalanche, where since all the trees are attached to these very steep rocky slopes by very shallow roots that essentially connect to one another, if the top tree gives way, it ends up tumbling down the side, pulling down all the other trees behind it, which leaves this vertical scar down the face of the mountain. Anyway, fun fact, during a bit of yoga and stretching, you can see the cloves drying up high, just on the right-hand side. Day 2 is where the track starts to get spicy. So heading out of the beech tree forest and into some prairie land, the mountains on either side become very apparent. This path crosses about 50 avalanche paths and occasionally apparently has a bit of flooding, although it was quite dry on this attempt. The path then winds up quite steeply from Pamplona Lodge through to the new Mintaro Hut, located just in the valley before McKinnon Pass. Alright, here we go. Mintaro Hut, 6 hours. Let's see if it really takes that long. Well, let's go. This is where the glowworms were yesterday. Over in here. Who would have known? Just in this overhang. Let's go have a look. Here we go. They were just sitting under this bit of fern here. Nothing remarkable about it in the daytime, but for some reason it is the meeting place. I should add that each of these 3 huts does have a staff member of the Department of Conservation who at 7:30 p.m. gives a bit of a report on the weather, on what we can expect from the track ahead, as well as answers any questions or gives a bit of background through storytelling or historical facts about the track that you're walking on, which was a really interesting insight into something that otherwise wouldn't have noticed. Apparently, these types of parasitic mushrooms only grow on trees that are rotting on the inside, so good ones to avoid when you are walking underneath their branches. Looking up into the trees, there are signs of old telegraph or telephone lines, which I'm not sure which huts they connected, or whether they went over McKinnon Pass, but they did seem to be present for all 4 days. These red bushberries, I believe, are a source of food for the kea and the kaka parrots. Avalanche warning for those attempting this out of season, which apparently you can do at your own risk, and be ready to be wading through chest-deep snow. A lot of the bridges that you cross on this hike are removed in winter just because they are swept away by floodwaters or damaged, and so they generally take them away by helicopter, which does make this walk much more challenging. For those who watched Alone Australia last year, This eel sighting got me really excited. Maybe, just maybe, there'd be a chance of surviving out here easier than it was in Tasmania. Just stepped out of the trees into this amazing valley here. Finally, it's just opened right up. You can see the mountains around you, which before you could only glimpse through the trees. Now you're really in it. This one, I believe, was one of the lunch stops for the guided tours. I didn't stay here too long because the sandflies were starting to come out. And if you stop for more than 5 seconds, they will find you. And another 5 seconds, and they are biting into you. So, best run away. What I found was that clothing that covered you up entirely was the only surefire way to get around it. All those DEET repellents, not super effective. These were some very talkative ducks, the paradise ducks, the female with the white head and the male with the black head. Ah, doesn't look ominous at all. It's incredible to see how many mosses and lichens are hanging onto these beech trees, which really just create this blanket of greens and greys and browns. Quick lunch break at Hidden Lake, watching some of these waterfalls that have been created by rain come down the side of the granite cliffs. Well, this is a stop for the guided walkers, who are soon going to be enjoying their free-course meal. Still a while to go, because the new Mintaro Hut is actually a few kilometres further than it used to be and than is shown on most maps. As the rain began to intensify, more and more waterfalls appeared on the mountain. The rainforest here was becoming more and more verdant as the day went on, and as we climbed steadily up towards the Mintaro Hut, which sits at an elevation of about 600 metres. The clouds had now well and truly settled inside the valley, and blue skies were a distant memory. I don't know what all this commotion was about. They took off and landed from the exact same spot. Just saw those ducks got a lot colder very quickly. So fortunately we are not far from the hut. Oh, look at this lake. Hold on. Here we go. My thermal bath feeding into this lovely little pond. Wow. Unfortunately, the water turned out to be absolutely freezing, so declined to take a bath on this occasion. Well, this is the new Mintaro Hut. Absolute luxury compared to the first night. 6 USB ports. Well, 5. One of them wasn't working, but that's better than nothing. Whoever said there were no spiders in New Zealand? What is this? This looks like a daddy longlegs with big yellow mandibles. And it is not scared of me. In fact, it's sort of ready to jump. primo gas stove cooking facilities, good for some mee goreng. Boom! And just like that, it is morning. Blue skies on day 3, and this is the view from the back of the hut, with lights that have turned on at 6:30, I believe. And here's a little quick tour of the room. Very nice bunk beds, an area to store your luggage, and views from every bed outside. This corridor vestibule space was used to hang up all the wet jackets and store all the shoes. Let's go. Day 3, and this one has got it all if your knees are ready for it. First up, about 450 metres ascent up to McKinnon Pass and shelter, and then straight back down about 900 metres vertical past some amazing waterfalls and the hut through to Sutherland Falls. Don't know why the map jumps up, you don't climb up the cliff. And then back along all the way through the beech forest to Dumpling Hut, which is probably about a quarter of the way down the Arthur Valley. Definitely heard some Kia back there, but unfortunately haven't been able to spot any. Just that Wecker who was having trouble balancing. Reasonably steep switchbacks up to McKinnon Pass, nothing too dramatic though, only about 500 metres. The view up here is quite something, all the way down the Arthur Valley, almost right up to Milford Sound. Some amazing alpine flora out here with really vivid colours and strong geometric shapes at a tiny scale. Suddenly, with no warning, we found ourselves in the middle of a cloud. And looking back up, the Clinton Valley is the toilet with apparently the best view in the world. But I think it's facing the wrong way. Although there were no Kia up here, it was still amazing to look back on the valley we'd climbed out of and see the cloud waterfalls cascading back into it. Super windy up here though, so no time to stop and wait. This side of the mountain definitely felt a lot wetter than the other side, with the path frequently crisscrossed by small rivulets of water. Punamu, or greenstone, was an extremely hard stone used by the Maori to fashion their weapons, tools, or other symbols of status. This valley happened to be an abundant source of the stone, which I cannot imagine carrying back up that pass in any quantity. Much of the flora out here has to rely on absorbing water not only through their roots but also through their very small leaves to supplement what is a very shallow soil base, or non-existent soil base. This area, called the Roaring Burn, is probably 100 vertical meters of waterfall, if not more. It was incredible. And that's the Quinton Lodge sign for the guided hikes, but for the independent peeps, this is the point where you can choose to do Sutherland Falls, the highest waterfall in New Zealand. Devastated to have forgotten my swimmers here, but it's okay because there are still a few k's to go to Dumpling Hut. At this point, the sun was out, it was getting really hot and steamy, and I was grateful to have a bunch of zippers on both pants and jacket to be able to breathe a little bit. The weo, or the blue duck, have really interesting beaks with a bit of skin on the edges that allow them to search for food underwater without hitting the rocks. A pretty peaceful part of the river to call home. A swim in these freezing waters certainly felt refreshing, but I'm not sure it was worth the price of getting eaten alive by sandflies on the way back while trying to hop over these rocks. I don't actually have any footage from the dumpling hut, but it was quite a nice hut with 4 dorms, about 10 beds each, and of course flushing toilets as the other 2, which was a absolute luxury compared to the drop toilets along the path. Also gas stoves and fresh drinking water. So day 4 left a bit earlier just to make up some time and try to get onto the water taxi. One thing about these paths is you can't really get lost. I don't know why I took a compass. So this one continues more or less flat along the valley, through to the old boathouse and up to McKee Falls, then continues along the western bank, along to the Giant's Gate Falls, where it's a good stop for lunch, and then right the way through to the Sandfly Point pickup. A very interesting program by the Department of Conservation is each of those valleys can be closed off and made stoat, rat and possum proof to attempt to bring some birdsong back to the Arthur Valley. Some, if not, hopefully, as it was pre-arrival of Europeans and pre-introduction of these invasive species. It's an ongoing program, and around Milford Sound there are quite a few areas that are already showing huge benefits of this method. Very different to the Sutherland Falls, but no less impressive of its many cascades and terraces. Right at the foot of this waterfall is Bell Rock, a rock carved out hollow by water and then flipped upside down, allowing people to go underneath and stand up in a cavern-like space. Very exciting, but impossible to photograph. A lot of pigeon activity here, but I was just too slow to catch it in action. For the next 100 metres, the path rises quite steeply into the edge of a cliff face where a path has been chiselled into the side, overlooking the river. So many mushrooms here. If I knew which ones were edible, I could definitely live off mushroom soup every night. At this point, the sandflies were getting quite unbearable. I was mostly protected by long sleeves and long pants, but any opening they found, they went for straight away. Back at the hut, we were told this would be the last freshwater stop. This area was far less peaceful than the rest of the hike had been, as helicopter after helicopter was flying through the valley. For this last kilometre, the path widens to a very respectable width, which was intended for a horse and carriage to come up the Arthur Valley, at least to the Sutherland Falls, if not beyond. It never eventuated, but at least it makes for a very nice finish into Milford Sound. At this point, it becomes a bit of a waiting game, as some of the day hikers coming in from Milford just to get to Giant's Gate Falls occasionally have a taxi boat, such as one here, come in early out of the scheduled times. We were fortunate enough to jump on with 2 other hikers and make it back to Milford Sound. The blue skies and crystal clear waters were not at all what I was expecting. More like the middle of the Caribbean than Milford Sound that I was shown in brochures. At this point, there were still 2 hours to go until the bus, so it was the perfect chance to go grab a hot pizza from the kiosk and check out the filming locations of the Alien Covenant movie. And that's just about it. Thanks so much for watching. I was really fortunate to have that one spot come up in the bookings and to be able to take those 4 days to do this amazing hike. For those heading out to do this one shortly, all the best. It's going to be incredible, and I hope that this video does in some small way help contribute to your experience. See you out there. But wait, you're saying, isn't this the wettest part of the world? Isn't this a part that receives between 6 to 10 meters of rain every year? Well, I don't know. I had a moment where there were 4 pretty sunny days, so lucked out. But in a way, I really wanted to go back and see what the real Milford Sound looks like. And so here we are, back on the bus, 4.5 hours, and coming back into the pass, almost through the tunnel. It is looking promising. The forecast was for over 100 millimeters of rain today, and any rain that falls on these mountains comes right back down in these incredible waterfalls, of which there are hundreds already, and it hasn't even really started to rain. So here we are, jumping onto a ship and about to set sail. I will just leave you with the music at this point. As we approached the open ocean, it started to come down hard, and I was very glad for a nice layer of Gore-Tex and down jacket below, because 4 days of this, while walking, would have been a totally different experience to the 4 days of sun. So definitely a very nice little intro to what one can expect out here and what one should be ready for. Just to finish up, a couple of tips on accommodation and transport. So the Department of Conservation website is where all the hut bookings are made through. And over here, if we just jump out to places to stay, we can see the 950 huts that are available around New Zealand. And out of those, we'll be using 3 on the Milford Track. And that's the Clinton Hut, the Mintaro Hut, and the Dumpling Hut. So we'll pick out our region here as Fiordland, and then choosing the place to stay in the Fiordland, in this case Milford Sound, Milford Road area. If we're unsure about that, we can always have a look at this handy map down here. And if you zoom in, you can start to see those individual huts. Now I know that this area is at the top of Lake Te Anau, so we're going to aim for the first hut in the hike, which is the Clinton Hut. And it should be this one here. Yes. So after clicking on this one, it will bring up the booking page, which gives some information on the hut, how many it sleeps, what sort of facilities are available, and in this book online portal, it will show the availability based on the date that's selected. So generally, I don't think we'll have any luck seeing any green over here, but it is worth checking back every day or so just to see if any green does appear, because cancellations do happen. In terms of transport, there are a few companies like TrackNet that offer a bus service right up to Te Anau Downs, and then the ferry over to the Glade Wharf, as well as the pickup at Sandfly Point. So it's worth just making sure that when you do book, you do have that bus to and from Queenstown or Te Anau or wherever you're starting off, as well as both of the water transports. Safe travels and all the best.